Helena was 33 years old, a quiet woman from a small village where the roads were made of dirt and everyone knew everyone else's name, habits, and history. Nothing stayed secret for long in that place. Each morning, before the sun rose and before the village began to breathe, Helena woke up. The air was cold, the sky still dark, and the streets were silent except for her footsteps. While others slept, she walked to the village bakery and unlocked the door with hands that already felt tired. Her days followed the same rhythm. She mixed dough, cleaned trays, carried heavy sacks of flour, and watched the oven from early morning until her arms ached and her feet burned. The smell of bread stayed on her clothes long after work ended. Customers smiled, paid, and left, rarely noticing the woman who made sure their tables were full. Helena did not hate her job. There was comfort in routine, in knowing exactly what to do. But inside that routine, she felt invisible, as if her effort disappeared the moment the bread was sold. At the end of every month, the same question returned. Where did the money go? Helena did not drink. She did not buy expensive clothes. She did not eat out or waste food. Her life was simple and careful. Still, when she counted her salary, it vanished before she could save even a small amount. Rent took one part, food another, gas, old payments, and unexpected repairs took the rest. When the numbers were done, nothing remained. Not even hope. Her dream was not big. She did not want a new car or a fancy life. She only wanted a used car, something small and old, just enough so she would not have to walk long distances every day or ask others for help. On rainy days, the dirt road turned into mud that pulled at her shoes. On hot days, dust clung to her skin. She watched neighbors pass by on motorbikes or old cars and wondered how they managed it. She was not jealous. She was confused. In the evenings, Helena walked home along the same road, her body heavy, her mind restless. She asked herself the same question again and again. If I work this hard, why am I still stuck? The thought frightened her more than being poor. It made her feel trapped, as if effort alone was not enough. Helena worked hard. She did everything right, or so she believed. And yet, her money disappeared like smoke. At first, Helena believed her problem was temporary. One bad month could happen to anyone. Then it became 2 months, then 3. Slowly, she began to notice a pattern that made her stomach tighten every time she thought about it. The money didn't disappear all at once. It faded away in small, quiet pieces. There were the obvious things: rent, food, gas. Those were expected. But then came the smaller expenses, the ones that seemed harmless on their own. A snack bought quickly because she was too tired to cook. Extra bread taken home from the bakery because it was only a little, then forgotten and thrown away days later. Small items from the village shop added to the credit book with the thought, I'll pay it next month. Each time, the amount felt too small to matter. But together, they formed a leak she could not see until the bucket was empty. Then there were the surprises. Her shoes tore open while she was walking home, and she had to buy another pair. The stove stopped working one evening, forcing her to pay for repairs she hadn't planned. One month, the gas bill was higher than usual. Another month, the shop owner reminded her gently that her debt had grown again. Every time Helena thought she might save something, life stepped ahead of her and demanded more. It made her feel as if she was always chasing something she could never reach. No matter how fast she walked, the finish line moved farther away. At night, lying in bed, she replayed her expenses in her head, trying to find the mistake. She hated that feeling more than hunger. It felt like failure without a clear reason. Helena started to notice the lives around her. On her way home, she saw neighbors riding motorbikes or parking old cars in front of modest houses. These people were not rich. They worked in the fields, ran small shops, or did delivery jobs. They laughed, talked about plans, and moved forward in small but visible ways. Helena did not feel jealous. Instead, she felt something heavier, confusion mixed with shame. Why them and not me? What am I missing? She began blaming herself. Maybe I'm careless without realizing it. Maybe I'm not smart enough with money. Maybe this is just my fate. Those thoughts stayed with her while she worked, while she walked, while she counted coins on her kitchen table. Slowly, her belief in the future weakened. The dream of owning a car felt less like a goal and more like a foolish fantasy she should stop thinking about. One early morning, while delivering bread to a woman in the village, Helena paused at the doorway. The woman was talking to a neighbor, her voice calm and confident. She said something that made Helena stop moving. I save 1% of everything I earn, the woman said casually. Every day. Helena frowned. 1%? The number sounded almost ridiculous. How could something so small change anything? She continued her walk, but the words stayed with her. A few days later, she met the same woman again on the dirt road and asked her about it. The woman smiled and said, "Don't wait for money to be left at the end. Just save 1% first. Try it for 1 month. Then watch your life." That night, Helena lay awake longer than usual. The idea felt too simple, almost foolish. But beneath her doubt, something stirred. For the first time in a long while, a different question replaced her fear. What if the problem wasn't how much I earned, but how I treated what I had? Helena did not decide immediately. For several days, the idea stayed in her mind like a quiet question that refused to leave. 1%. The number felt almost insulting. She calculated it in her head while working at the bakery. 1% of her daily earnings was barely anything. A single small coin. What could that possibly change? It wouldn't pay rent. It wouldn't fix a broken stove. It wouldn't buy a car. Part of her wanted to laugh at the thought. And yet, another part of her was tired of doing nothing but worrying. One morning, before turning on the oven and before the smell of bread filled the air, Helena made a small decision. She reached into her pocket, took out 1 coin, and placed it in an empty glass jar behind the stove. The sound was soft. A small click against the glass. She stood there for a moment, feeling a little foolish, like a child pretending to play a game with money. This is pointless, she thought. But she did not take the coin back. That night, when she returned home, she looked at the jar again. The coin sat alone at the bottom. The amount was so small it almost felt invisible. For a moment, she considered using it for bread or gas. Instead, she turned off the light and went to bed. For the first time, she chose not to give up before seeing what would happen. The next day, she added another coin. And the next. The jar filled painfully slowly. There was no excitement, no sudden relief. But something else began to change, something quieter and deeper. Each time Helena dropped a coin into the jar, she paused. She started asking herself a new question. How did I spend the rest of my money today? At first, the answers made her uncomfortable. She noticed how often she bought small snacks because she felt tired or bored. She realized how much bread she took home from work, telling herself it was free, only to let it go stale and throw it away. She saw how often she bought small items from the village shop without thinking, adding them to credit because it felt easier in the moment. None of these choices felt wrong on their own. But now, she saw them clearly. Helena began to notice waste everywhere, not just at home, but at work too. Flour spilled on the floor. Bread burned in the oven because no one was paying close attention. Dough thrown away because it was mixed carelessly. She had seen these things before, but now they bothered her. Not because her boss was watching, but because she was watching herself. A few days later, Helena found an old notebook in her house. The pages were yellow, the cover bent. She started writing down her expenses at night. The notebook was messy. She crossed out numbers, made mistakes, started again. Writing things down felt heavy at first, like admitting something she had avoided for years. But with every page, the fear lost a little of its power. The numbers were no longer shadows. They were real, and because they were real, they could be changed. Weeks passed. The jar was still far from full, but Helena felt different. She was more careful with her choices. She cooked instead of buying snacks. She took only the bread she knew she would eat. She paid small debts faster instead of letting them grow. None of this felt dramatic. There were no miracles. But there was control. One evening, her boss watched her work in silence for a while. Then he said, "You've been more focused lately. Less waste." Helena nodded, surprised that someone else had noticed. A few weeks later, he gave her a small raise. It wasn't much, but it felt larger than the number itself. This time, she didn't rush to spend it. She quietly added 1% to the jar. One night, as she dropped another coin inside, Helena finally understood what was happening. The jar didn't fill fast. It didn't change her life overnight. But her awareness had grown with every single coin. And for the first time, she no longer felt trapped. She felt awake. The change did not arrive loudly. It did not come with applause or sudden luck. It arrived quietly, through repetition, through small choices made again and again. Helena began to work differently, not faster, not harder, but with more care. At the bakery, she paid closer attention to every step. She measured flour instead of guessing. She watched the oven instead of walking away. Fewer loaves burned. Less dough was wasted. At the end of the day, the floor was cleaner, the trays were fuller, and the numbers added up just a little better than before. Her boss noticed. At first, he said nothing. Then one evening, while closing the shop, he looked at the records and nodded. "You're careful now," he said. "That saves money." A few weeks later, he gave Helena a small raise. It was not a big amount, but it felt like proof. Proof that her effort finally had a direction. This time, she did not celebrate by spending it. She smiled to herself and kept going. Outside the bakery, her habits were changing too. At the village shop, Helena stopped buying on credit unless it was truly necessary. She carried a small list in her pocket and stuck to it. Each time she opened the debt book, she noticed her name taking up less space. One day, she realized something that made her stop and stare. Her name was almost gone. The weight she had carried for years felt lighter, like a knot slowly loosening. With more confidence, Helena asked her boss for extra work. "I can help with deliveries," she said. At first, she used a hand cart, pushing it down the dirt road in the early morning. It was tiring, but it paid a little more. She told her boss she was saving for a car. He didn't laugh. He nodded and gave her more delivery hours. Each extra coin went into the jar. The jar began to feel different in her hands. It was no longer just glass and metal. It had weight. Real weight. Sometimes, Helena would lift it, shake it gently, and listen to the sound. It reminded her that she was no longer waiting for life to change. She was changing it herself. One evening, after months of saving, Helena sat at her small kitchen table and opened the jar. She poured the coins onto the surface, counting slowly, her hands steady. When she finished, she stared at the number in front of her. Her breath caught. It was enough. Not for a perfect life, not for comfort forever, but enough for a down payment on a used car she had been quietly watching for weeks. Helena leaned back in her chair, surprised by her own tears. They were not tears of relief alone. They were tears of recognition. She was no longer trapped. She was in control. Helena bought the car on a quiet afternoon. It was old, with scratches on the paint and a seat that creaked when she sat down. It was not beautiful, but it was hers. When she placed the money on the table, her hands trembled slightly. The seller asked how long she had saved. Helena smiled and said, "Every day, a little." He nodded, not fully understanding what that meant. That evening, Helena drove home slowly along the dirt road she had walked for years. The engine made a soft, uneven sound, and the steering wheel felt stiff in her hands. She did not turn on the radio. She wanted to hear everything. The road, the wind, the quiet. When she parked in front of her small house, she stayed inside the car for a moment, breathing, letting the feeling settle. Her eyes filled with tears, not because of the car, but because of what it represented. The real victory was not metal or wheels or an engine. The real victory was the woman sitting behind the wheel. The woman who no longer felt afraid of numbers. The woman who no longer waited for luck or blamed herself without understanding why. Saving 1% did not make Helena rich. It gave her something far more valuable. Control. Awareness. Confidence. She still worked hard. She still counted her money carefully. Life did not suddenly become easy. But now, when problems appeared, they no longer felt like a trap. They felt like something she could face, step by step. Helena understood that discipline does not begin with big promises or dramatic changes. It begins with one small choice, repeated until it becomes strength. If you feel stuck, do not wait for a miracle. Do not wait for more money or a perfect moment. Start small. Save 1%. Write things down. Look honestly at your daily life. The change you are waiting for may already be in your hands. If this story gave you hope, please like this video. Share your thoughts or lessons in the comments. And subscribe to keep learning English through real-life stories that speak to the heart.